Hi everyone, and welcome to Comic Book Issue's 11th show. I remember when they said I wouldn't last 15 episodes. Anyway, I'm your host, the Last Angry Geek, or as some of you like to call me, the guy on this website that we don't like. That's okay. I realize some of you may not like me, but that's because you don't know me. And I've been thinking that I haven't really lived up to that angry part of my name. So, as a fan of the comic book industry, nothing makes me angrier than when great potential is squandered. So today I'm going to present my first ever top 11 list. The top 11 comic book industry's misfires. Those moments where something potentially really cool turned into something really, really awful. And why top 11? Well, because the... Excuse me.
What I really, really want. So tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I wanna, really, really wanna say, ah.
Man, I hope he's here. Oh, hi! Why top 11? Get the fuck out of my house! Not in the face! Thank you. Ah! Oh, enjoy the show. You missed me twice. Number 11, CrossGen. What at the time was the hottest new company in comic books, the likes of which fans hadn't seen since the launch of Image, became one of its biggest failures and a cautionary tale for comic book publishers. CrossGen started out with A-list talent, both in established veterans like Ron Mars, Bart Sears, and George Perez, and up-and-comers like Greg Land and Jim Chung, and created a shared universe that covered fantasy, mythic heroes, and sci-fi. Then the money ran out. Allegedly, Barnes & Noble returned massive quantities of CrossGen's trade paperbacks, wiping out the company's financial reserves. There were also rumors of embezzlement. Regardless of the reason, artists and writers were quitting and suing for back wages, and CrossGen filed for bankruptcy. One bright side is that Disney acquired the catalog of characters, and with Disney's purchase of Marvel, Marvel Comics recently announced that they would be returning to the CrossGen universe. But given that Marvel mismanaged another comic book property, Malibu Comics, right into the ground, I'm afraid it's going to be a while before we can say whether or not CrossGen's rebirth is a hit or a miss. Number 10. Kevin Smith returns to Marvel. Kevin Smith, after his initial foray into comics on Marvel's Daredevil, had an equally successful run on DC's Green Arrow. It was then announced that Smith would return to Marvel and write a Spider-Man Black Cat miniseries, and later returned to Daredevil to chronicle his rivalry with archenemy Bullseye. The first 3 issues of The Evil That Men Do and the first issue of The Target were greeted by Smith's fans with great enthusiasm. And then Smith disappeared off the face of the earth. In fairness, Kevin Smith was busy working on the movies Jersey Girl and Clerks 2. By the time he returned to The Evil That Men Do, it was 3 years later, and the conclusion he wrote had a remarkably different theme and feel to it. Whereas the first half had been a light buddy adventure, the second half was more a social commentary on sexual abuse, rape in particular. Daredevil, The Target, was never completed and most likely never will be. Now, Kevin has since returned to DC Comics and written several Batman miniseries with no problem. He was working on films both before and after Black Cat and Daredevil and turned out comic scripts with no delays. Prompting me just to ask what went wrong with Kevin Smith's return to Marvel. My number 10 misfire.
Number 9. Michael Turner signs with Marvel. During a 2005 Marvel X-Men panel at Chicago, which yours truly actually happened to attend, Michael Turner showed up in the audience and was signed right then and there by Joe Quesada to a contract with Marvel Comics. Rumors abounded that it would be a retelling of Wolverine's origins, but this time in Marvel's Ultimate Universe. Sadly, it would never come to be, as 2 years later, Michael Turner was dead. A longtime sufferer of bone cancer, Turner had beaten the disease before and had put it into remission, only for it to come back several times. The final time claimed his life in June of 2008, and at Wizard World Chicago, the very convention where he had signed with Marvel, it was announced that he was dead.
Michael only ever drew a few covers for Marvel Comics as the Wolverine miniseries got canceled and he was waiting for word on his next project. Number 9 on my list isn't so much a misfire as a tragedy of missed opportunities.
Number 8. The Apocalypse Comes to the Wildstorm Universe. Wildstorm was an imprint owned by Jim Lee. It created such hits as Gen 13, Wildcats, and The Authority. The title's sales started to dip and the powers that be made the decision to reboot the company's shared universe. Only writer Gail Simone took advantage of this by revamping Gen 13. Most of the other creators decided to keep their titles exactly as they'd been previously. But still the sales were falling. So the decision was made to revamp the universe again, but more drastically. A mini-series called Number of the Beast eventually led to the global devastation of Earth. Now every single title set in the Wildstorm universe features heroes in an apocalyptic setting. While some new books set in the Wildstorm universe, like DV8, have bucked the trend, the flagship titles are stuck telling stories limited by this setting. If you want to do an apocalypse title, that's one thing, but you end up limiting the stories you can tell with this setting, and maybe alienating those who followed your books previously.
It was a gimmick designed to drum up interest in their line, but I feel it's more of a hindrance than a help. The Apocalypse Comes to Wildstorm is number 8 on my list of misfires.
Number 7. The OMAC Project. On the road to DC's Infinite Crisis, which promised to be as epic a crossover as DC had done in years, we were treated to several miniseries that would play into that series. One of these was the OMAC Project. Featuring an army of cyborg killers stalking superhumans at the behest of a secret government agency, the series was an initial hit. Then something funny happened. In between issues, the story left the miniseries and veered into all 3 Superman titles at the time, as well as an issue of Wonder Woman. The controller of the OMACs, Maxwell Lord, had taken control of Superman's mind. Superman wreaked havoc on the Earth in his own titles until Wonder Woman freed him by killing Lord in her own book. But wait a minute, if you didn't buy those 4 books, or even just Wonder Woman's issue, then when you came back to the miniseries a month later, you were lost. The chief villain was dead, and we were referred to Superman's path of destruction and Wonder Woman's taking of a life that we hadn't witnessed for ourselves.
So to get the whole story, you not only had to buy the miniseries 6 issues, but 4 extra comics. This was an absurd stunt that was unfair to the readers. Number 7 is a 6-issue miniseries that lasted 10 issues. The OMAC Project.
Number 6. Secret Invasion. The shape-shifting Skrulls were back and they were taking over. Their own planet destroyed, they'd found a way to infiltrate Earth and avoid detection. Fans were thrilled as it became a guessing game of who could you trust. Was that really Captain America who'd been shot, or a Skrull imposter? What about Iron Man, who'd split the superhero community down the middle with his actions? The Skrulls finally invaded, but there was nothing secret about it. A huge armada touched down in New York City, and Skrulls just started blowing up everything in sight. Which heroes were Skrulls? Well, only Ant-Man and Spider-Woman, as well as minor characters in main titles. The heroes who turned up on Earth, apparently missing from the 1970s? All imposters used by their own people and heroically slaughtered by the quote-unquote heroes. The Skrulls are not offered a chance to surrender, and their beaten queen is shot in the head by Norman Osborn, ushering in the Dark Reign. What had promised to be a tense, almost film noir battle of secrets ended up just being a slaughterfest in downtown Manhattan.
The best way to describe it is you buy a ticket to go see the movie The Usual Suspects, but end up in a theater that's playing G.I. Joe. Secret Invasion, damn obvious invasion, is number 7 on my list of misfires.
Number 5. Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner. DC was in the midst of reorganizing all of its heroes. Superman had died, Batman had his back broken, and Wonder Woman was replaced. Now it was time to revamp Green Lantern. Hal Jordan's hometown of Coast City had been destroyed over in Superman's books. Wanting the power to restore it, he challenged the Guardians of the Universe and went on a spree murdering the other members of the Green Lantern Corps and seizing their power until he became Parallax. With only one ring left, a young artist named Kyle Rayner became the last Green Lantern. However, things soon took a turn for the worse when, in an attempt to get his power ring, a villain named Major Force killed his girlfriend, stuffing her body into a refrigerator. Gail Simone, the writer of books like Birds of Prey and Secret Six, dubbed this moment the Women in Fridges syndrome to refer to women playing the parts of victims in comic books. Kyle Rayner was forever linked to that moment. Plus, DC at this time was trying to catch lightning twice, whereas they'd successfully replaced the original Flash, Barry Allen, with his protege, Wally West. But where Wally was a legacy hero, he was the former Kid Flash, who replaced a dead mentor who died a hero, Kyle was a new creation who replaced a great hero he never knew, who had become a monster and was still alive. While many did take to Kyle, a large contingent awaited for Hal Jordan's eventual return and redemption, which finally happened in Jeff Johns' Green Lantern Rebirth.
Kyle stuck around in the book Green Lantern Corps and is still a vital part of the GL mythos today, but he never obtained the popularity of Wally West or surpassed his predecessor Hal Jordan. That and his being marred by the Women in Fridges controversy makes Kyle Rayner misfire number 5.
Number 4. X-Men, the third Summers brother.
The X-Men are without a doubt one of the most popular teen books of all time. And while some fans love the little niche that the X-Men occupy within the Marvel Universe, some are understandably frustrated by the book's tendencies to introduce and then forget plot threads. The best example of this is the third Summers brother. In 1993, Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, has a conversation with the villain Mr. Sinister, who's manipulated Cyclops his whole life. At one point, Sinister refers to Scott's brothers, but Scott corrects him by saying that he only has one brother. Intriguing, right? Well, it took 13 years for that plot to come to fruition. Several writers planned to reveal the identity of the third Summers brother, but always ended up leaving the book before they got around to it. Finally, Ed Brubaker wrote a miniseries, Deadly Genesis, that revealed the brother was named Gabriel Summers, aka Vulcan, and he'd been erased from Scott's memory when he seemingly died. The character was then sent into space, conquered the Shi'ar Empire, and was seemingly killed in the cosmic book War of Kings. A lifetime of less than 7 years after nearly twice that time was spent speculating on his identity. It took so long to find out the identity of the third Summers brother, and then it turned out to be a brand new character, not an existing character like we had always suspected, and that was, frankly, a bit of a disappointment. This too-long plot thread in Uncanny X-Men is number 4 on my list of top 11 misfires.
Number 3. Relationships in comic books.
The best example of this is, once again, from the book X-Men. In X-Men 100, while aboard a space station, the X-Man Rogue kissed Colossus. Colossus, being in his metal form, found that Rogue could not drain his life force or powers, and the two began a makeout session that seemed to promise these two crazy kids would be making beautiful music together. But nothing happened. In fact, Rogue soon got back together with longtime boyfriend Gambit, even though in issue 100 she had said things between them were finished. She was aware Colossus had feelings for her, but proclaimed herself spoken for. Colossus died, was later brought back to life, and got back together with his longtime girlfriend Kitty Pryde, and these supposed feelings were never mentioned again. So what happened? Well, according to writer Chris Claremont, the editorial mandate came down that these two could not be together. And I'm paraphrasing here, Rogue belonged with Gambit. Now this is something that really bothered me. Let the writers write. If they have a good idea, there's no need to hold on to the fragments of the past just because it's what's expected. Okay, given what I picked as the number 1 on this list, this one might come off as a bit hypocritical, but I honestly feel that the comic book industry's failure to shake up relationships and the vague ideas of what could have been make up number 3 on my list of comic book misfires. Number 2. Image Comics. In 1992, the comic book world was rocked when virtually all of Marvel's top artists walked out on their jobs. Rather than jump ship to DC, the group consisting of Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, Jim Valentino, Eric Larson, and Whilce Portacio founded their own line of comic books under the banner of Image. Fans were thrilled by the new titles being announced and eagerly awaited books like Cyberforce, The Savage Dragon, Wildcats, and Spawn. And while some of the books were criticized for an emphasis of style over story, not surprising as the founders were almost all artists and not writers, the titles blew through the sales charts and became bestsellers. But almost from the start, Image had major problems. Many of the books shipped later than solicited with huge gaps between issues. Image even solicited an issue through Wizard magazine featuring art by all the creators. It took years for that issue to finally be sent out to the people who had bought it. Then came the problem of having so many huge egos in the room. Mark Silvestri accused Rob Liefeld of trying to hire away an artist from his studio, which was in direct violation of the Image policy not to interfere in one another's work. Liefeld was fired from Image, but eventually returned to the company. Jim Lee left Image in 1999, selling his studio and its titles to DC Comics. Image gradually shifted to helping promote and publish independent works by creators, along with the remaining launch titles like Spawn and Savage Dragon. But if you think time has taught the men and women of Image that they need to change their ways, you'd better guess again. A 10th anniversary hardcover book ended up shipping 3 years after the proposed anniversary. And even today, the problems continue with a series entitled Image United. The book, featuring art by all 6 remaining founders, has so far only put out 2 issues, with Liefeld hinting that some aren't taking the project as seriously as others. Image Comics is without a doubt a revolutionary publisher and one of the powerhouses of the 1990s. But it's also a cautionary tale of what can happen when egos and fame get in the way of making quality comic books. Image Comics is a cautionary tale at number 2 on my list of comic book misfires. And the number 1 comic book misfire is... Number 1. Any attempt to revamp Spider-Man. There have been few comic book heroes to inspire such loyalty or passion from their fans as good old Peter Parker, the spectacular Spider-Man. Maybe it's his inspired rogues gallery, his equally famous cast of supporting characters, or his ability to quip jokes in the line of danger, but Spidey is beloved. And that's why fans hate it when the powers that be try to rewrite the history books. And the thing that most of them are trying to rewrite? Spider-Man's marriage to Mary Jane Watson. For some reason, the writers hate Mary Jane. Now, granted, she's no Lois Lane, but the writers feel that being married both ages Spider-Man and that being married to an attractive woman makes him unrelatable to the fans. They've tried to get rid of Mary Jane. They blew her up once. They had her leave Peter to go work on her acting career in Hollywood. Hell, they've probably given her amnesia for all I know. But there are 2 attempts to retcon Spidey that stand out above the rest. The Spider-Clone Saga. Spider-Man was confronted by a man who looked and acted just like Peter Parker and had his spider powers. It turns out this man was Ben Reilly, seemingly a clone of Peter created by a villain called the Jackal. But then the twist came that Peter was the clone. He seemingly lost his powers and he and MJ moved away while the new single and blonde Spider-Man went about the web-crawling business. Fans went ballistic. They hated the idea that the Peter they'd followed for years was not the authentic Spider-Man. Sales plummeted and the creators rushed to bring back Peter Parker, who once again became Spider-Man while Clone Boy Ben died a hero's death. Think nothing could outdo a lame clone story? Well, welcome to the evil known as One More Day. Thinking he'd finally found it out from the Spider-Man marriage, Editor-in-Chief Joe Quesada came up with a doozy. With Aunt May dying from an assassin's bullet meant for Spider-Man, Peter Parker searched for a way to save her life beyond medical science. With no help in the superhero community, it seemed like May was dead meat, and the guilt would cripple Peter from ever being Spider-Man again. When an angel arrived, well, that is a fallen angel, the demon Mephisto. He offered Spidey Aunt May's life, but only if MJ and Peter agreed to let the devil rewrite time to keep their marriage from ever happening. That's right, Spider-Man made a deal with the devil. The greatest hero in the Marvel Universe, or at least the one with the strongest ideas of right and wrong, sacrificed his relationship to the woman he loved to save his aunt's life. While Quesada argued that it was a heroic sacrifice, the fans almost universally panned this story, and 3 years later it continues to be a controversial topic. I myself found Spider-Man's actions completely out of character and felt it ruined Peter Parker as a hero. I no longer have any interest in Spider-Man. Hey, that's me. Some people say the stories that have followed have been the best Spider-Man's been in years. Maybe, but I'd say a good 95% of those stories could still be told with Peter married to Mary Jane. It seemed like a pointless change to me that tainted a beloved hero. That's why these attempts to revamp Spider-Man's life are the #1 comic book misfire. I'm the Last Angry Geek, and I need a vacation after this one. Thanks for watching, True Believers.